Good afternoon. I'm Doug Marker, President of the City Club. Welcome to another City Club Friday Forum. Today's program is a debate for the Multnomah County Chair election with Diane Linn and Ted Wheeler, and it'll be moderated by Tonya Parker. I'd like to remind you to please turn off your cell phones and paging devices during the program. I have a few announcements to make. Our program next week will be another debate, choosing a challenger, the Republican gubernatorial candidates, and we'll have Jason Atkinson, Kevin Mannix, and Ron Saxton, and that'll be moderated by Greg McPherson. Other upcoming events include next week, two of our issue committees are meeting. On Tuesday, April 11th, our Education and Human Development Issue Committee meets with Linda Christensen, who is a language arts teacher at Grant High School, and she focuses on helping students look critically at the world, ask questions that challenge the information they receive, and examine aspects that relate to race, class, and gender. On Wednesday, our City Club Citizenship and Government Issue Committee meets with Nancy Gronowski, who's a senior planner with the City of Portland's Park Bureau, to discuss the park's 2020 vision. Details on all of these events can be found on our website and in your weekly bulletin. I'd like to recognize new members joining us today and ask them to stand when I say their name. We have a returning member, Doreen Binder, and then new members, Ted Gleichman, Barbara Pesquiera, and Virginia Willard. Would you join me in welcoming our new members? Welcome to City Club. And speaking of membership, our spring membership drive is off to a successful start. One big reason is the generous contribution from City Club member Ned Hayes. Ned donated a matching contribution so that new members who join during the spring campaign and the current members who recruit them receive a free Friday Forum lunch as an incentive to join the club. I want to thank you very much for that contribution, Ned. And with us today is Eva Schweber, who chaired the City Club's recent study of the Portland Fire and Police Disability and Retirement Fund, and is now the chair of that study's advocacy committee. And that's a considerable amount of involvement for a member, and you'd think that Eva had been with us quite a long time. But in fact, she just joined us last year. So I'm going to invite Eva to come up and talk a little bit about what City Club membership means to her. Eva?
So for many years, I listened to Friday Forums on OPB, and I really appreciated the range of issues that were addressed at Friday Forums, but I didn't think City Club membership was necessarily for me. That impression has proven to be false. One of the things I have found in the past year of being a member of City Club is that I've had an opportunity to engage with a wide range of people who I would not necessarily have had an opportunity to talk to in my everyday life. These are people who share my love of Portland and my interest in civic engagement. And my husband and I are different people, and it's rare we actually find the opportunity to get involved in the same organizations. We're both fairly active, but our attentions tend to diverge. But one of the nice things about City Club is there's such a wide variety of ways to interact with City Club and intersect with City Club, whether that be through the issue committees that Doug mentioned, or the research, which is what really drew me, the Friday Forums, the book clubs, and David really gravitated towards the blog and the book club and some really great new leader tours. I clearly went right into the study committee, although I did go to an issue committee meetings a couple times, but what really attracted me about City Club was the opportunity to get involved in that kind of research. And another thing, as I mentioned, I listened to the Friday Forums and I really enjoyed them. And I really like the fact that the topics really vary very, very widely. In the past year alone, there have been Friday Forums on the cost of government. My favorite, the financial contribution of craft breweries to Oregon's economy. And at that one, Bridgeport did bring us beer, which was really nice. To some really incredible studies. In the last few months, we've had the Fire Police Disability and Retirement Fund study. There's also been the Early Childhood Education study. And the amount of media attention that both of those reports received, I think, is really an indication of the importance of City Club's voice on local policy. And that's really what I get out of being a City Club member, is getting to participate and be part of that voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva, and remember that that free lunch incentive continues through June 2nd while supplies last. I'd like to recognize our sponsors this quarter who make broadcast of City Club possible, and they are CH2M Hill, Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt, and West Coast Bank. Please join me in thanking our sponsors. I'll now introduce the moderator of our debate today, who's Tonya Parker. She's the Senior Deputy Director of Fannie Mae's Oregon Community Business Center. Mrs. Parker works with lenders, real estate professionals, nonprofit organizations, developers, and government agencies to help carry out Fannie Mae's $15 billion five-year affordable housing investment plan in Oregon. Tonya?
Hello. First, I want to thank you all for being here. I have to find this so exciting. To me, this is a perfect example when you think of that stilted word, democracy. This is democracy in action. This is the exchange of opinions. This is the forming of ideas. And then you can all go out and vote based on what you learned in here today. So this is going to be a good time. Okay, so let's get into it. This debate will have several sections. First, each candidate will give a 3-minute opening statement. A coin toss determines the order of the appearance in this debate. Our time speaker today is March Gafori. March, can you raise your hand? Following the opening statements, candidates will respond to questions suggested in advance of this meeting by City Club members. A subcommittee of the City Club's Program Committee composed a final set of questions. These are the only questions which will be asked today. There will be no questions from the floor. We will rely on the judgment of our distinguished panel of City Club members seated here to the side, and I'll introduce them in a moment, and they'll decide whether or not the questions have been answered by the candidates. If 2 or more of these members raise their cards indicating that they feel a question has not been answered, I will restate the question and then ask the candidate to reply again. So on our panel, we have Corleen Kraft. Raise your hand, please. Greg McPherson, and Melody Rose. So following the City Club's questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask 3 questions of the other. Following the rotation of candidate questions, each candidate will make a 3-minute closing statement. Please be respectful of the candidates, and please hold all applause until the end of the program. Now I'll introduce the candidates. First, we have Diane Linn. Diane Linn graduated from Portland State University, attended the leadership training program at the University of Oregon, and completed Harvard's Kennedy School of Government program for senior executives in state and local government. Even before graduating from college, Commissioner Linn served as assistant to former Representative Gretchen Gafori, Mayor Neil Goldschmidt, County Commissioner Earl Blumenauer, and served on the Metropolitan Youth Commission and Police Budget Advisory Committee. In Washington, D.C., she served as staff assistant to Congressman Ron Wyden before returning to be elected to serve on Multnomah County Commission in 1998 and in 2002, County Chair. Commissioner Linn also led Oregon NARAL, directed the Office of Neighborhood Associations for the City of Portland, and oversaw the Neighborhood Mediation Center. So let's welcome her. And introducing our next candidate, Ted Wheeler. Ted received degrees from Stanford University, Columbia University, and Harvard University. In the last 26 years, Mr. Wheeler has guided, owned, and operated several businesses and nonprofit enterprises. His community experience includes work for Neighborhood House, Goose Hollow Family Shelter, the Cascade Pacific Council of Boy Scouts of America, the Oregon Sports Authority, the World Affairs Council, and the Portland Ambassadors. Mr. Wheeler founded the Walk for the Wildwood Trail in Forest Park, co-founded the Heron Point Wetlands Rehabilitation Project, founded Portland Youth Works, and helped create Oregon's first statewide nonprofit association. Mr. Wheeler also authored the book, Government That Works, Innovation in State and Local Government in 1993, and taught government courses at Boston's Northeastern University. Please help me welcome Mr. Wheeler.
So, shall I begin?
Yes, please start with the opening statement.
Very good. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for being here and being a part of this really important civic discussion, this civic debate about a very important race at a very important time for this community. I want to add a few more things to the background that you just heard, because a few things really inspired me very early on. As you can tell, I was a bit active even before I graduated from even before high school and then into college. I did grow up in Buckman neighborhood in inner southeast Portland, and when I was 12, my mother started a group home for teenage foster kids. She had already had 7 kids of her own, 2 of them had gone, 5 of us were still there, and she established 6 slots for adjudicated youth or foster kids that could no longer live with their own families. I had a very firsthand, upfront experience with what it's like for people to live in a situation where they can't live with their parents anymore, and it's a real crisis. And I saw the role of government in that position. It's very important to understand the role of county chair is as chief executive officer. It's an interesting and unique element of the job of county chair, and I had management experience coming to the job before that in the private sector, in the nonprofit and public sector, before I ran for the commission and served for 2 years so I could get acclimated to all the issues of the county before I ran for county chair. The most important thing I hope you leave this room knowing is that this job is responsible for producing results. It's about leadership during very tough times. I hope we have time to talk today about schools and funding for education, support to kids who attend schools so they can be successful. I know we'll talk about public safety and the use of a facility like Wapato, services to the vulnerable, the mental health system, homeless youth downtown. The budgeting that we've had to do at the county under my leadership has been very challenging, but we've sustained our bond rating. I've replenished reserves during the toughest of times from $2 million to $10 million, balanced the budget. We've had to cut about $70 million over 4 years' time, and we still face between $20 and $30 million more in the next 2 years. The priority-based budgeting process, which many of you heard about in this room around the cost of government, is what we've established at the county. It's extraordinarily transparent and important. I have earned the support of so many groups and individuals, and I hope I have a chance in the end to share all of those with you, but I'm especially proud of former Governor Barbara Roberts. She led this state through the toughest of times, having won the day that ballot measure 5 passed. We have very similar background in that area, and there's so many other groups and individuals that I hope to talk to you about as we continue on in this debate. Again, thank you all for being here and being a part of this conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler, your statement?
Thank you all for being here. The City Club embodies much of what I love about this community. Good citizens, meaning informed, engaged citizens, really are the riches of this community. This shared commitment to civic involvement is one of the main reasons that I've decided to step forward and run for Multnomah County Chair. I was born and raised in Portland, and like you, my deep commitment to civic involvement and public service is the foundation of many of the most meaningful activities of my life. Many of you attend the Friday forums each week, not just for the catered lunch, but because you're hungry to be involved in public affairs. Many of you have served on the City Club's very respected research committees, which have played a very direct role in our local government and improving our local government. We share a belief that concerned citizens bring a vital perspective to the challenges of good governance, and like you, I've researched, I've written, and I taught about it. My book, Government That Works, examines best practices from local governments around the nation that can be and should be adopted. My extensive experience as a community leader and business leader have prepared me well to serve as your county chair. I'll be drawing on my hands-on experience in our community with groups such as Neighborhood House, which is one of the county's largest human service providers, as founder of Portland Youth Works, which provides funding for our local schools, and groups such as Neighborhood House. One of the county's I will also be drawing on my role as a citizen appointee in state, regional, and local government processes such as job review, budget review, regional growth, and economic planning. I'll rebuild the relationship between our county government and the nearly 40,000 small business enterprises that serve as the backbone of our local economy. I'll draw on my nearly 26 years of guiding, owning, and overseeing finances and budgets for several business enterprises. We all know that governing is hard work, and that county leadership is especially fraught with tough problems, including lack of financial oversight and a waning public perception. But the imperative of restoring common sense to county government, of earning back public faith, and by opening up decision-making and getting county services to those that have nowhere else to turn, that's a calling that none of us can ignore. I know the importance of taking on a task to improve our community. That's why I'm stepping forward, and I'm proud to have the support of former Mayor Vera Katz, Oregon State Treasurer Randall Edwards, the Northwest Oregon Labor Council, and the editorial boards of the Gresham Outlook and the Portland Tribune among my supporters. I hope those of you who know me now only as the challenger will learn more about my ideas, my experience, my sense of purpose, and decide to join our movement to bring common sense governance and earned citizen confidence back to our county government. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you both. We will now move to the portion of the program where I will ask the questions prepared in advance by City Club members. The candidate to whom the question is directed will have 60 seconds to respond to the question. Then, following each answer, the opposing candidate will have the option of a 45-second rebuttal. The candidates have not seen these questions. So the first question is to Mr. Wheeler. Public safety makes up about half the county's general fund budget, but the public safety does not show up on a substantive section of your website, TED on the Issues. It seems you are not taking position on a central mission of the county. Why is that?
Well, first of all, let me just clarify. There are 10 very lengthy white papers that identify a number of important issues on my website. That's 10 more than my opponent has on her website. And public safety is very clearly a core obligation of county government, and I think it's an area where, frankly, we can do much, much better. Public safety is not just about jail beds, although opening the Wapato jail is clearly a priority for both of us. It's about supporting the entire spectrum of public safety services that reduce the crime rate over the long run. That's intervention and prevention, that's juvenile justice programs that keep kids out of the system before they get too entrenched, that's supporting alcohol and drug addiction treatment programs, that's supporting mental health services. The plans that have been put forward so far on the Wapato jail are inadequate, they're too little, and they're too late. And that's why I have proposed strengthened partnerships between other jurisdictions to help us open that Wapato jail. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linn?
You don't need white papers on your website when you've actually got a record on the issues. I just last year worked very hard to open 171 new beds in partnership with the City of Portland. We won the day after some struggle, but we got those beds online because we need that sanction. I've worked very hard in this community to reform the mental health system, to make sure our drug and alcohol addiction services and treatment is in place. We've made some substantial progress in the fight against methamphetamines. And again, it's about getting the job done. I have a plan for opening Wapato. We just met with some commissioners and people from Clark County. I think in less than a year, that facility will be open, and that asset will be of great use to this region collectively.
Thank you. For Ms. Linn, at the time the county began to build the Wapato jail, you were aware there was no money to operate it. Granted, construction of the jail had been approved by the voters. Can you explain your decision to build the jail versus returning the money to taxpayers?
Well, when the people of a community vote very clearly on an issue, it's our responsibility as elected officials to follow through, whether we agree with that decision or not. I wasn't on the board when the measure was referred. but I joined the board after the process was underway. The sheriff took the lead in the siting of the facility. That took some time. We weighed in at different points in time to help direct it in the right direction, and I think the siting of the facility at the Ledbetter Peninsula was the right location. The plan to end up operating the jail has always been in our sights. It's just that, remember, we've been through extremely difficult economic challenges in the last 4 years, and I think both the private and public sector experienced this, and we do too, and we're going to get the job done.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
I have a fundamental difference with Chair Linn on this subject. I believe it was a mistake to build the Wapato jail before we had an operating plan in place to actually fund its operations. That decision could not have happened in Clark County because they have a rule in place that says until you have the operating plan in place, you can't actually spend capital construction dollars. I'd do the same thing at Multnomah County if I were currently the chair. Furthermore, the partnerships that I've been talking about for the last 8 months are not just now starting to be developed as a result of the sheriff and Commissioner Roberts' leadership. And I'm glad that Chair Linn supports that strategy. It's better late than never, and I certainly will support that strategy and continue to support more partnerships to open the Wapato jail, but also operate it on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler, the Multnomah County Courthouse is going to have to be replaced. In order to do so, will require the county to issue large bonds to finance the project. Do you support the construction of a new courthouse, and if so, what is the cost for the project, and what do you plan to do to get the voters to approve the bond?
There is no question in my mind that we have to open the new courthouse. It'll cost about $150 million. The reason we have to do it is because it's not seismically upgraded. It'll collapse if we have an earthquake estimated over a 6.0, and we know that's going to happen. I have supported strengthening the joint public safety funding and planning that takes place between the City of Portland and Multnomah County. If we can save even 5% of our total public safety costs, that will be a down payment of goodwill towards a budget levy that we could put on the ballot in 2008 to begin the process of funding the jail. It should be located downtown, and as another idea, I'd also encourage us to look at purchasing the former federal courthouse, which already exists in downtown Portland and is being rented at below market rates. Nobody's actually approached the federal government yet to talk about that possibility, but the asset exists, it already has courtrooms, it's seismically upgraded, and if we could rely on our relationships with our legislative session in Washington, we could probably get that done. Thank you.
Thank you. A rebuttal, Ms. Linn?
Thank you. This is another example of where, excuse me.
I'm sorry, we have 3 question marks for Mr. Wheeler's answer. Could you please try again?
Could you restate the question, please?
Sure. The Multnomah County Courthouse is going to have to be replaced. In order to do so, will require the county to issue large bonds to finance the project. Do you support the construction of a new courthouse? And if so, what is the cost for the project, and what do you plan to do to get the voters to approve the bond?
Yes, $150 million as soon as possible.
Should we move on? Okay.
To support it. I think the way you get the voters to support it is by showing, first of all, that we're spending the money in the system that we already have as wisely as we possibly can. So that means that we're not overspending on overtime. That means we're utilizing all the services we have as wisely as we can, that we're using technologies like electronic monitoring and demonstrating as much cost savings as we can by showing accountability, by doing joint public safety planning and budgeting, and demonstrating and documenting the savings for the voters as a down payment of good faith towards a public safety levy.
Thank you. Ms. Linn, it is an understatement. I'm sorry. Yes, please.
That's okay. Well, this is another example of an issue that I've rolled up my sleeves and worked very, very hard to make good progress on. We're on the brink of gaining site control of a piece of land in downtown Portland. The study's been done, the conversations have happened, and we've gained consensus on the board together with the legal community and many other people, especially the judges who have to work in the current facility, to move forward with PDC to get site control of the facility. It will be a $100 million project, no question about it, and we will have to work very hard We've called it creeping incrementalism to move towards the direction of getting that new facility built, and we are going to have to show the public what their piece of it will mean and how important it is as jurors and people that need to use that facility to help us rebuild that. And I think we can make that case to the voters when we've done our hard work to make good progress on it.
Thank you. Ms. Linn, a question. It is an understatement to say that relations on the Multnomah County Commission have been strained. From the outside, it seems as if your colleagues have been able to build alliances without you to support certain efforts. However, you have had a difficult time finding majority for your priorities. Can you explain why you think you've had such a difficult time moving major initiatives with your fellow commissioners?
Well, thank you for asking the question. I know it's been on many of your minds, and I'm happy to answer it. Let's go back over the next 4 years and the big issues that have hit Multnomah County really hard, perhaps like a perfect storm. First of all, we raised taxes for schools and basic services. That's a very controversial thing to do, even when you have the voter support to do it. Secondly, we played point on the incendiary issue of the decade, if not more than that, when I made the decision to allow same-sex couples to marry in this community. That creates a tremendous amount of stress and strain among any elected officials. And finally, we've had to cut a lot of money out of Multnomah County. It's been very challenging, very difficult. That creates stress. I am embarrassed by what you hear and see in the paper, but I am not responsible for the behavior of other elected officials. I'm responsible for my results and my accomplishments, and we're making great progress.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
Last night we had a forum in the Corbett neighborhood, and Chair Linn referred to 3 of her fellow commissioners as, quote, the Mean Girls Club, unquote. Moreover, I'd point to last week's taxpayer-funded newsletter called The Linn Line, in which Chair Linn takes no fewer than 2 swipes at her fellow commissioners. I don't think she fundamentally understands what the problem is or how to fix it. And through my nonprofit and business leadership experience, I've learned how to build consensus by treating people with respect, having open doors, seeking their advice and input, and frankly, in this case, treating the other commissioners with the respect they've earned as elected commissioners. I've also met with all of the commissioners, not just the 3 that have endorsed me, but Commissioner Roberts as well, and I'm building the foundation for trust. I don't mind...
Okay. Would you like to finish the sentence?
No, that's okay.
All right. All right, a question for Mr. Wheeler. The redesign of the county mental health system under Diane Linn has been widely praised. Do you agree that this is one thing she's done well? What specific steps would you take to ensure that mental health programs integrate their efforts with jails, alcohol and drug, and housing programs?
There have been improvements in the mental health system. For example, moving towards intervention and away from hospitalization was the right move. There's no question that combining mental health services with health services was also an important move. I'm very concerned about some of the changes, though, that have been done without really vetting with community experts. For example, the decision to continue to separate alcohol and drug addiction services from health and mental health flies in the face of best practices and current science. Moreover, mental health services throughout the community are widely fragmented. I think it's an appropriate role for county government to actually serve as a convener and a facilitator of those different services to figure out what the community's priorities are, who can do what, and where the gaps are. And so I, as county chair, encourage that type of collaboration. There's also specific services I'd like to enact as well, including supported employment opportunities. That's being done very, very effectively in Washington County. I'd like to adopt that model here in Multnomah County as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linn, rebuttal.
I am very proud of the very difficult reforms that we faced when I became chair. Literally the day I was sworn in, the crisis triage center was closing down. Mr. Mejia Put had been shot the spring before in a secure psychiatric hospital. We had to face some very, very difficult changes in Multnomah County. We forced the business and clinical model to shift early, to have much earlier interventions, and saved a lot of money at the back end for ineffective hospitalization. And I appreciate Mr. Wheeler's support for that, but once again, it's an example of what he doesn't know about what we do within Multnomah County. We haven't talked, or we have not moved drug and alcohol into community justice. That simply isn't happening. Ideas are floated and concepts are considered, but that just isn't happening.
Thank you. Ms. Linn, Measure 37 exempts regulations protecting public health and safety. Should the county aggressively exercise this exemption to protect neighbors when developments threaten environmental protections?
Well, I voted against ballot measure 37. I think it undermines the very magic of the land use laws in Oregon. I'm very disappointed with the way that was structured and how convoluted the whole piece is. The health and safety regulations, we do have an absolute responsibility to enforce, and I think we have in the cases that we've dealt with so far. I also think it's very important that we handle every Measure 37 case as fairly and objectively as we can to follow the letter of the law. But health and safety we should stand firm on, and that has been our pattern at Multnomah County to date.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
I would agree that health and safety we need to follow the current regulations under health and safety, but I want to touch bases on what she said about Measure 37. We shouldn't be passive about that. There's things that we can proactively do. We should actually look at the 33 Measure 37 claims that are out there right now. We should prioritize them in terms of their environmental impact, and then we should be meeting one-on-one with those individual claimants to figure out if we can reduce or mitigate the environmental impacts. We should talk about setbacks. We should talk about buffers. And we should also support what Metro is trying to do in terms of taxing windfall profits on properties that are brought in to the urban growth boundaries. That would help us support infrastructure and also provide a pool of resources to purchase Measure 37 claims.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler, you have been criticized for serving on the board of a family foundation that gave money to Bill Sizemore. You have responded that the decision was the foundation's, not yours, and that you oppose Sizemore's efforts. Some of Sizemore's initiatives had severe financial consequences for county programs. Did you give money to defeat Sizemore's initiatives? If not, why?
Well, as the old Clinton saying goes, this dog just don't hunt. The foundation to which you refer is actually run by my father, who I'm proud is here today. It's his foundation. He runs it on a day-to-day basis. He makes the decisions about where funds are distributed. And I love my father very, very much, but the fact is we have different politics. My role as a former director on the foundation was to bring organizations to the table that I wanted to see funded in addition to the decisions that he'd already made around funding. I brought organizations like Start Making a Reader Today, like the Children's Institute and the Friends of Forest Park to the table. So unfortunately for Chair Linn, my father is not running for county chair. I am, and I have a strong record in support of improving government. I have a pro-gay rights background, and I have an untouched environmental record in terms of activism and proactiveness on the environment. And so I appreciate the question and the opportunity to clarify that misconception.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we have 3 questions, so could you please further explain?
Could you restate the question, please?
Sure. And I think what I'm hearing from Greg is that particularly the last part of the question, I'll read the full question and then pay close attention to the last part.
I got it. I actually, it was the question, why did I not specifically support Bill Sizemore?
Correct.
I have spent my entire life working against the legacy of Bill Sizemore. If you go back 20 years and start looking at the fact that I taught government courses, that I got a master in public policy at the John F. Kennedy School of Government, that I actually wrote a book on how to make government, local government in particular, more effective through partnerships, you'll see that for 20 years I've had a philosophy that's fundamentally opposed to Bill Sizemore. On MPAC, the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, where I was appointed by David Bragdon, because of my environmental leadership, I have an outstanding record in support of land use planning and environmental leadership. Plus, I founded the Walk for the Wildwood Trail, and I co-founded the Heron Point Wetland Rehabilitation Project. So I don't just do what I'm told in terms of the environment, I actually take proactive leadership. Thank you.
Ms. Linn, rebuttal.
This dog has several legs and it does hunt. In fact, there's more than just Bill Sizemore who's done unmeasurable damage to this state. There is a distinct difference between our backgrounds, where we came from, what we fought for every step of the way. If you're going to run as a progressive, you have to face the question of why, in any way, as a member of the board of the directors of that foundation, you would have anything to do with supporting Bill Sizemore's policies or the other groups, Oregonians in Action, fundamentalist Christian organizations that have given money to all the other measures, the opposite side of the efforts we've tried so hard to defeat in this state that have affected the rights of gays and lesbians and of the choice movement in this community. The difference between us is extraordinarily stark.
Thank you. Ms. Linn, you have been publicly scrutinized and in some quarters criticized for your handling of the county's decision to issue marriage licenses to gay and lesbian couples. Isn't it arguable that the decision to issue licenses without a thorough public debate, in fact, precipitated the passage of Measure 36, making gay marriage unconstitutional? Please explain your actions and their consequences for the future of gay and lesbian relationships in the state.
Thank you for the question. It's a very good one. First of all, the petitions for the Defense of Marriage Act were filed before we made the decision. Please understand that. We did not. That we were the last of about 12 states that had not had a DOMA passed in their state, and we knew it was coming. We knew it was going to happen here. Those petitions were filed before we made the decision to allow same-sex marriage. When the decision was being made in other states to consider this, same-sex couples were lining up at our door, and they would have sued us had we not changed our procedure. This is a complicated question, and I need more time to answer it. Let me just say that I have the support of Barbara Roberts. Betty Roberts is here, it's former Supreme Court Justice, and Hardy Myers. All are supporting my candidacy based on my legal opinion and position that we made the right decision on constitutional rights, and that effort took us 10 percentage points ahead in the effort to gain support and acceptance for equal rights for all human beings in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler? Well, we have three. Let's go.
Well, thank you for asking, because I think there is more to it. Why not the public hearing? And I'll explain that to you. If we had held, remember, this was not a policy decision. This was a legal and procedural decision that I made as chair of the Board of County Commissioners. I had the authority and I had the responsibility to make sure every procedure within the county was in compliance with constitutional law. So there was no board meeting required, but we could have had an open session. There's no question about it. And the answer to why we didn't was that if we had, not a single marriage would have happened in this community. That's just the fact of the matter. I made a very, very difficult choice, and I'm standing by it. We could have done better with the process. I've apologized for that publicly, but I can tell you now that we would not have had marriages in this community with a hearing ahead of time.
Ms. Linn, the judges panel has asked me if you could specifically answer the last question that I asked, and that is, please explain your actions and their consequences for the future of gay and lesbian relationships in the state.
And actually, I was trying to do that when I said that, first of all, the DOMA was happening in this state whether we allowed same-sex marriages or not. Secondly, the fact that we allowed 6,000 people to be honored and celebrated in the community, that their children could come, that their parents could celebrate their children's marriages, advanced the cause by 10 percentage points in the polls. In the course of a lifetime of a movement, that's a huge stride forward in a year's time, and we did it because we put a face on the issue of same-sex marriage. The press and the media really did feature the faces and the celebration of the couples that had lived together in this community as couples, as families, for many, many years, and that's why we moved the movement forward decidedly.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
Well, first of all, I want to give credit where credit is due. I think the four commissioners who made this decision they had the right goal in mind, and I want to credit them for that. I want to credit them for their courage in that regard. The process was, of course, flawed. The decision to omit Commissioner Roberts from that decision was disastrous. When you exclude a district commissioner by extension, you also exclude his constituents. There was a consequence. We missed an opportunity in this county to build basically a consensus. We missed the opportunity to build a coalition. The fight for gay rights is to win hearts and minds one person at a time, and you cannot win hearts and minds if people feel that their government is shutting them out of the process.
Thank you. Those are all of our questions. We will now move on to the portion where the candidates can question each other. During this portion of the program, each candidate will ask 3 questions of the others. Questions must be asked in 30 seconds. The opposing candidate will have 1 minute to respond, after which the questioner will have the option of a 30-second rebuttal. We will alternate between the candidates and begin with Diane Linn.
Okay. What I want to ask Mr. Wheeler is, where does he stand exactly on school funding? I proposed a 2-year, $10 million commitment to meet the nut for Portland Public Schools as we committed to as part of the city and county and business community support, and to make sure that all students in the county, county-wide, would receive an equal share of funding for their schools. I've heard him say, well, I like a part of this, I like a part of that. I want to know if he actually believes that we should be meeting our commitment to Portland Public and also the ADMW distribution.
Thank you, Chair Linn, for the opportunity to make this emphatically clear. I unequivocally support Multnomah County contributing this year to support the shortfall in the public schools across all 8 districts. What I would have done if I had been county chair is would have taken the best of the 2 competing proposals that were out there, the majority's position, which was $6.4 million, that's the right number. I would have tried to build a consensus around ADMW, a fair and equitable distribution for all 8 school districts in Multnomah County. I'd also like to make sure that we continue to provide the school-based performance audits that were part of the ITAX package. That's going to help the school districts spread those dollars more effectively across the 8 districts, and it's also going to build public trust in the process.
Ms. Linn, a rebuttal?
Well, again, in order to meet the 2 goals, you have to commit, and you have to know what it takes to get the consensus. We actually had the support of all the districts to do the 2-year phase-in. So once again, you can dodge the question and kind of go back and forth, but the question is can you support a 2-year phase-in so we can get the $5 million that PPS needs and still make sure that every child in the county gets an equal amount of those dollars county-wide? That's the question. I don't think he answered it straight up.
I'd be happy to answer it again.
Judges?
That was my rebut.
Yes.
Oh.
Go ahead.
You have 30 seconds.
I do not support Chair Linn's 2-year proposal. I think it should be a 1-year proposal only. And the reason I don't think it should be a 2-year proposal is we should turn our attention to getting the local option levy passed here in the city of Portland. I'm not talking about the other 7 districts for the time being. We also need to light a fire under the folks in Salem who are responsible for school funding, not take the heat off of them by signaling that we're going to continue to support the schools indefinitely at the local level. 1-year plan.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler, your first question of Ms. Linn.
Chair Linn, in the last few weeks, there have been serious allegations of financial impropriety in your office. It's been worrisome to all of us. What are you specifically doing as the leader of the chair's office, which is funded by $1 million in taxpayer funds, to ensure that the budget laws are never broken, that staff is never paid out of dedicated funds for programs they don't work for, and that nobody in your office pressures the chief financial officer to, quote, misrepresent information to the Board of Commissioners or the public, unquote?
Well, I would claim that this is a dog that doesn't hunt. We have had very strong adherence to budget law, and in fact, the Multnomah County as a jurisdiction has won award after award after award under the strong leadership of our budget management team. We have had some stress at the county. I've made that very clear. The issues that were brought up have been issues that could have been resolved behind the scenes. They did not need to have this public display. We had some disagreements. There was no specific pressure whatsoever. And in fact, we are following the letter of the law. And in fact, Multnomah County is stronger, in a stronger fiscal position now than it has been. So I'm very proud of my record on the fiscal condition of the county. And I'm happy to be held accountable on every dollar we spend in every way we can. We get creative sometimes about how to do that, and everyone does in the public and private sector when you're under this much stress.
Thank you. Mr. Mr. Wheeler, rebuttal.
I would just say this, that Multnomah County actually has had a strengthened financial position in the last few years, and it's largely as a result of the individual who resigned saying he was pressured by your office to misrepresent information to the public and the Board of Commissioners. As somebody who has served as an officer or as a director of a trust company, I take fiduciary responsibility seriously, and I'll expect that from anybody in my administration as well. That's why I will specifically ask for training and experience in fiduciary responsibility for anyone on my staff.
Ms. Linn, your next question of Mr. Wheeler.
Well, I'm going to go a little more lighthearted for you all right at this point. It was asked in an interview yesterday of Mr. Wheeler, did you buy a Ford Focus in the last year to be able to present to the community that you are a man of the people, given that you own very much more expensive cars and you come from a very wealthy family? Was that to project to the community that you are one of us? I happen to drive a Ford Taurus, so I'm interested in the answer to this question. Why did you buy that car?
I actually test drove the Ford Taurus. It's a gas-guzzling pig. It won't fit. It won't fit in my garage, and good luck parallel parking because the rear dashboard's too high. I got it because it gets good mileage, it fits in my garage, it's a great car for around town, and honestly, it never occurred to me that this would be an issue in this race. There's too many other issues that are more important.
Ms. Linn, a rebuttal.
Do I get a retort? Oh, okay. I just find it very hard to believe, I'm sorry, I find it very hard to believe that a candidate for Multnomah County Commission wouldn't have considered what they drive around and how that projects who they are to the community. I manage a difficult family budget. I have to make tough decisions about what I'm going to do to get my kids through college. That's what average people of this community face every day, and I don't think Mr. Wheeler can have any idea what that's like.
Mr. Wheeler, your next question of Ms. Linn.
Chair Linn, 2 times during the past year, your transportation staff informed you that within just a few years, the Bridge and Roads funds will be depleted. Now the county is borrowing $3.2 million to cover its shortfall. When there's no money in our Bridge and Roads funds, the county cannot even apply for matching federal funds. You've now had 2 warnings in the past year about this dangerously low fund that essentially secures community safety. Will you simply keep borrowing to do infrastructure repair, or what is your plan?
That's a good question, and the truth is we've actually renovated bridges in this community. The Hawthorne Bridge, we've done, as most of you know who crossed them, work on the Burnside and the Morrison bridges. We've done an extraordinary job of maintaining the bridges, and we've just transferred roads to East Multnomah County to the city of Gresham to find better efficiencies and work in better partnership. Again, the county's fundamental job is to help people in need and people in trouble and run a world-class library system. That's what we do. But we do have responsibility for these bridges, and I'm worried about the Selwood. We're now trying to replace, and we will be replacing the Selby Island Bridge. I didn't particularly agree with borrowing the money from the general fund. My 3 colleagues insisted on doing that. That was the wrong choice. But we've got, as a community, a tough question to face. How are we going to find the funds? The states face this problem. It's not the only area of which we're really challenged fiscally. And I would pose the question right back to Mr. Wheeler, what would you do into the future to deal with this problem? It's a very big, tough question.
Mr. Wheeler?
Yes, and I'll actually answer that question. You know, the funds are at $2.5 million and $3.4 million respectively. They'll both be at negative $1.5 million in the next 2 years. And borrowing is only a stopgap measure. It's not going to get us where we need to go. Multnomah County does not have and will never have the fiscal capacity to maintain its 27 bridges and 300 roadways, or 300 miles of roadway. So I am going to actually spearhead an effort to regionalize the transportation infrastructure so that we have more clout both in Washington, D.C. and Salem, where the state transportation dollars are. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linn, please ask your last question of Mr. Wheeler.
My turn to ask.
Yes.
I'm going to bring up this issue again because I think it's so very important that you know who is running for these positions and who we really are. Mr. Wheeler is really a lifelong Republican until just 2001 when he changed his registration to independent. I am a lifelong Democrat and really reflect the values of this community as it relates to all the issues of the day that we care about. I want to know that if you're portraying yourself as a progressive, given the background of the Family Foundation, how is it that you can suggest to this community that you are, in fact, a progressive?
I appreciate the question, Chair Linn, and it's a fair one. I would simply say, look at who I am and look what I have done with my life, not look to my family or other people who aren't in this race. And as I said, I love my father very much, and we just have different politics, and that's okay. I'd point to the fact that I have written a book that was nationally recognized for helping local governments be more effective in delivering services, particularly human services, to people. I also took a leadership role in environmental issues by creating the Walk for the Wildwood Trail, the Heron Point Wetlands Rehabilitation Project, and I have voted every election for a Democrat for president, with one exception where I disappointed my parents very, very much by voting for John Anderson.
Ms. Linn, a rebuttal.
Well, while you were doing that, I was fighting on the forefront of the fundamental right for women to choose. I've been fighting for gay and lesbian rights, for all the environmental issues of the day, giving money, giving time, being on the bridges to create visibility in campaigns. Every event, every opportunity there is to advance these causes. When you have the money to give to good organizations, that's great. And I hope in my next lifetime I might be able to do that. There's a difference between activism and engagement and just philanthropy. Huge difference.
All right, Mr. Wheeler, your last question of Ms. Linn.
Yes, Chair Linn, under your leadership, we've seen much bureaucratic reshuffling of county departments. Shared services was eliminated due to a lack of support and its inability to save money. Your recent reshuffling of the Human Services Department alarmed service providers like senior citizen groups because they believed that it had no clear rationale. Can you please share with us specifically how the county's frontline workers and community partners have direct access to you during your decision-making on structural changes?
Once again, the county's budget process, the priority-based budgeting, is very transparent. I really invite you all to go to our website and pull up the program offers and take a look at the choices we're having to make at Multnomah County. The reason we've made changes within the bureaucracy in the last 4 years is because we've operated with $70 million less money. That's disruptive to people. That kind of change is really hard. It puts people in a position of having to recalibrate what they do and how they do it. It disrupts our community partners tremendously. But we've had to find efficiencies, and so we can continue to provide the services people rely on. I'm proud of the changes I've made at Multnomah County. I've been able to balance the budget. We've engaged our employees and the community in all the discussions about this. We're going to make more changes. We cannot continue to do business as usual. It's not an option at Multnomah County. We can't go back to the days of the post-go-go 90s that don't exist anymore. We're in a different environment now.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler, you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, we are in a different fiscal environment, but I disagree that we just have to sit on our hands and hope the world doesn't pass us by and treat us with too much disrespect. There are things we can do at Multnomah County. One of the first things you did as county chair was dismantle the Project Results program, which gave frontline employees as well as community groups that deliver our services an opportunity to share best practices and ideas, and it led to the improvement of many of our services. I want to reinstate that. I've also proposed that we put a...
Please finish your sentence.
I've also proposed that we establish a council of county service providers to help me work directly with those organizations that deliver the county services.
Thank you. We will now move to the final portion of the program, 3-minute closing statements from each candidate. We will begin with Diane Linn.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you again for all of your wonderful attentiveness to this. I hope you consider it a spirited conversation, because that's what politics should be. That's what democracy offers. I want to go back over some very important results that I've offered, and I really want to share with you that This job is around getting the job done. And I'm not good with sports analogies, but I'm going to give this one, as most of you know. I want to give this a try because I think it'll illustrate the point. I've been like the quarterback down on the field. Mr. Wheeler wrote a book a while ago, a dissertation, and has observed and looked at other practices around the country, and I applaud him for that effort. That is in no way comparison, and you can't hold that in comparison to doing the job on the field, moving the ball forward. And the team that I'm working with is beyond just who serves on the board. They are important members of the team. But who else is on the team are the people that have supported the efforts that we all care about in this community, and let me give you a few examples. Not only have we supported schools beyond imagination to win the support of the Oregon Education Association. I'm very proud to be Citizen of the Year 2 years ago with former Mayor Barry Katz because of our efforts to avert the strike and to bring $90 million a year for the last 3 years to the public school system. But we've also established the Sun School program, Schools Uniting Neighborhoods, which we now have evaluation that shows that kids are improving their scores in math and reading. After-school programs, very effective. When I started as chair, there were 8 Sun Schools. Now there are 52. You want a leader in a position that can move the ball down the field and look to teammates on the field that are very broad and very diverse. We established that ITAX through a collaboration with a broad community group, and we won the day. We've made progress with the Citizen Crime Commission on the jail bed issue and on meth. Services to the most vulnerable in the community have been done. And I want to take a few minutes not to ask you to take my word for it, but to look to the people and the organizations that have supported my candidacy for this job. I won an early endorsement from Portland Teachers Association, from Oregon NARAL. It's actually now NARAL Pro-Choice Oregon. Basic Rights Oregon thinks this race is so important to prove that you can stand up and take the heat on an issue and still win your next election. It's people like Hardy Myers and Betty Roberts, so I'm so very proud, is going to be receiving an award from the American Bar Association for her leadership as a woman in law. And from people like Randy Leonard, and organizations like the teachers, the nurses, the firefighters, the service workers. And I only have 15 more seconds to tell you all the other people in the legislature, Mary Nolan and Carolyn Tomei, the Deputy Sheriff's Association, a very broad range of people that know my background, know my history, and know that I'll carry those results forward into the future, including very important environmental policies. Thank you all very, very much for your time today.
Thank you. Now for Ted Wheeler.
Thank you very much for hosting this event. It is time for a change in leadership at Multnomah County. Yes, the current leader has suffered many setbacks, some due to fate, some due to timing, but some were and still are self-imposed. The Board of Commissioners is not being led to consensus, despite what you may have heard today. County services are not getting to all the people who need them, and our community is losing faith in this urgently important level of local government. Yet that's not the only reason to bring change to the top. Multnomah County government, I believe, can not only be more efficient and more effective, I think with the right ideas and the right style of leadership, it can be brilliant. But it's only going to be that way if we stop missing out on big opportunities. We can make good after-school programs great by tying what's happening at the after-school programs with what's going on during the day academically. We can help create jobs and save money by converting the county's information systems to the open source platform. We can save money by converting our fleet to FlexCar. The city of Portland did it, and it saved 25% of their fleet budget. We can oversee county contracts more tightly, freeing up money that means more drug and alcohol treatment for the nearly 50,000 people in this community who are currently unserved. And we can be innovative and tap our 2 U.S. senators, both of whom have a history and a commitment to serving older adults. We need their partnership in securing additional funds so that the 95,000 older adults in this community can live independently and safely in their own homes. We can reopen the doors of our county government to the light of day, to the flow of input from committed citizenry, and to the needs of the neglected corners of our community. I can't tell you how many times over the past 14 months that I've been campaigning that I've heard from people who talk about ideas and great suggestions that they brought forward to the county leadership, and they were either ignored, turned away, or redirected to the point of falling through the cracks. Our county government can take the best thinking in the community and put it to work. I built a detailed plan for improving many aspects of our county government based on my own experience and some of this very innovative thinking from people just like all of you. I have served in leadership, and I've run large, complex, and diverse organizations in both the private and the nonprofit sectors. I'm a hands-on manager, a strong team player, and a decision maker who prefers hearing a variety of perspectives because that's the way to get to a leading consensus. Our community is full of talent, and it's full of hope. I'm ready to lead the movement for our community toward common sense change that puts our talent to work, puts our hope to work, and makes our county government work best for all of us. I want to thank my parents, Sam and Leslie, for being here. I want to thank my wife, Katrina, for being here. I want to thank all of you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you both. Doug?
I want to thank both of our candidates, our moderator, Tonya Parker, and our panelists, and we're adjourned.
You are welcome. You are welcome.
My hands are all sticky from holding these cards.
She had the heart more harder, Doug. You did. You had